Hi, I'm Gaby Evans and I'm 24. So I grew up in a small town in New Zealand. Right now I live in Auckland. I was born with severe to profound deafness as a result of congenital rubella. So I was diagnosed as being deaf when I was around 19 months to 2 years old. So my cochlear implant journey was a little more complex and definitely had its ups and downs, and I think not a lot of hearing people realise that it's not such a simple journey. So none of my family members are deaf, so it's just me. Living and growing up in a place where everyone except myself was hearing, it definitely had its sort of struggles and sort of barriers and things, but until I was a teenager that was really all I knew. I didn't know any different. So one kind of specific example is that when I was in year 10 I moved to a school that had like a deaf unit and interpreters, and it wasn't until then that I realised how much of a difference knowing sign language and having access to interpreters and teacher aides who know sign language helped. In high school, because I had access to interpreters, one example I can kind of think of is, say you're in a classroom and quite often teachers like to move around the room as they're talking. Quite often as, deaf learners, when kids are deaf and going to school, if they lip read, they will try and follow the teacher around the room to sort of see what the teacher is saying, and also if someone at the back of the classroom speaks, we have to turn our whole entire head around to actually see that person or the teacher if they're at the back of the classroom moving towards like the front as they're doing their walk around. The big difference having access to an interpreter or a teacher I can use sign language was that I didn't actually have to do that. I could just look at the interpreter or the teacher aide and say, hey, what did that person say? Or they would interpret it for me. It was great because then that whole kind of mental focus on trying to follow the teacher sometimes it was removed. I definitely faced bullying and sort of teasing in school. When I was 5, apparently my mum came to pick me up or something from school in kindy. This kid was looking at me and they just looked at me and went, why do you have ice in your ear? Sort of meaning my ear mold. And so that's just one example of a kid, like they weren't being malicious about it or anything, they just noticed it, and there was a difference for them, so they pointed it out. Coming to terms with being deaf and all that kind of that's involved in that, there was no sort of significant point where it was like boom, I accept it. It's been a gradual journey. I wouldn't say it's like fully accepted, but it's not something that I kind of think about every day anymore because it's just how it is for me. I think having deafness or having hearing loss does impact people's mental health, and I would say significantly for me as a small child, but also going to primary school. It got better as I got involved in the deaf community through going to a deaf school as a teenager. From then on, my mental health journey kind of changed. So I learned sign language when I was 14 when I moved to board in a deaf school. It took me about a year and a half. Most of that learning process was just learning how to respond. That language acquisition process is definitely quite a long and complex one, but what definitely helped was being in a full immersion environment where the staff around me were deaf, the other students were deaf, sitting around the dinner table, eating dinner, all the conversations were in sign language. There was a real focus on sign language, so that really helped. Having access to sign language and sign language interpreters has impacted my mental health in positive ways. For example, I don't have to rely on other people to make phone calls for me. I can access the New Zealand Video Relay Service, and because there are interpreters who are qualified and are bound by a code of ethics, I can use that service to make phone calls so that if I need to phone in my doctor or anything, the call is private, and so that sort of makes me feel more confident and independent. So advice I'd give to anyone who's learning sign language, deaf or not, if you are actually keen about this and want to commit, you need to get involved in the deaf community. Definitely respect the deaf community as a community themselves, and that they are the kind of basically holders of that language. But to know sign language at a good level, you need to actually get involved and communicate with deaf people. Advice I'd probably give to my younger self is that because this is the life journey that I am on, and because there are sort of difficult moments, it doesn't mean that every moment related to being deaf is going to be terrible. If your child needs you to look at them when you're speaking with them, or they're speaking to you, is that it's important, like, to sort of, focus or have maybe angle yourself so that they can see your lips if they lip read. And another thing is you don't actually have to know fluent sign language, but knowing at least, some important signs that are key to you and your family is really important to them.